The paperwork felt like a formality, a necessary evil before the real help arrived. Clinical trial participant waiver, it declared in sterile, sans serif font. Anxiety was a shadow that clung to me, a constant companion I desperately wanted to shake. So I signed. Jennifer Riley, signature affirmed, anxieties soon to be alleviated. That was the promise, anyway. Dr. Albright, the lead researcher, had a calm, reassuring voice. "This is a new anxiolytic, Jennifer," she'd explained, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "It targets the amygdala, dampening the fear response. We're seeing very promising results." Promising results and a chance at normalcy. I was sold. The potential side effects listed in excruciating detail in the waiver seemed a small price to pay. Nausea, dizziness, mild headaches. I'd lived with worse. What I didn't bargain for was this insidious unraveling, this creeping sense that I'm no longer the sole tenant of my mind. The first few weeks were unremarkable. Placebo, I assumed. I swallowed the small white pills each morning with a glass of water, went to my job at the library, came home, and repeated. My anxiety, if anything, felt slightly worse. A gnawing unease settled in my stomach. A sense of impending doom that had previously been limited to social situations now permeated my every waking moment. I dutifully logged my symptoms in the trial's online portal, noting the increase in heart rate and the persistent tightness in my chest. I even started having vivid dreams that I always forgot. Dr. Albright said it was all completely normal. Then came the voices. At first, they were whispers, indistinct murmurs at the periphery of my hearing. I dismissed them as the city's cacophony bleeding through the walls of my apartment, the product of an overactive imagination fueled by too much caffeine and too little sleep. But they grew louder, clearer, more insistent, and they weren't coming from outside. The first time I truly heard it, I was shelving books in the library's history section. A man's voice, low and gravelly, rasped in my ear. "Don't put it there. It goes on the bottom shelf." I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. There was no one nearby. I turned slowly, scanning the aisles, but I was alone, save for the faint, musty smell of old paper and the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights. I told myself it was stress, exhaustion, anything but what it felt like. A foreign presence inside my own head. I went home, made a cup of chamomile tea, and tried to relax. The voice returned, this time sharper, more demanding. "Turn off the light. It hurts my eyes." I fumbled for the switch, plunging the room into darkness. A wave of nausea washed over me. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Silence. Only the pounding of my own blood in my ears. Maybe it was just an auditory hallucination, a side effect of the drug, delayed and amplified by stress. I desperately clung to that explanation. I just wish it was true. The voices became more frequent, more intrusive. They offered unsolicited advice, criticized my choices, and recounted snippets of memories that were not mine. A childhood spent on a farm, the smell of hay and manure, the feel of rough wool against skin. I grew up in a city apartment. I've never seen a farm in my life. Sleep became a battleground. The voices invaded my dreams, twisting them into nightmarish scenarios, forcing me to relive events I'd never experienced. I saw faces I didn't recognize, heard languages I didn't understand. I woke up each morning exhausted, disoriented, and increasingly terrified. I called Dr. Albright, leaving a frantic message on her voicemail. She called back the next day, her voice calm and professional. "Hallucinations are a rare but possible side effect, Jennifer," she said. "We need to monitor you more closely. Can you come in for an evaluation?" The evaluation was a blur of questionnaires, neurological exams, and psychological assessments. Dr. Albright asked endless questions about the voices, their frequency, their content, their impact on my life. I answered as honestly as I could, trying to convey the sheer horror of feeling my own mind being invaded, colonized by something alien. As I was talking to her, another voice in my head said, "She's lying, she loves it." "It's like someone else is living inside my head," I stammered, tears welling up in my eyes. "And they're taking over." She prescribed a stronger dose of anti-anxiety medication, something to calm things down. They didn't work, and instead, things escalated. The voices started to influence my actions, small things at first, an inexplicable urge to take a different route to work, a sudden aversion to certain foods, a compulsion to rearrange the furniture in my apartment. Then, the suggestions became more sinister. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, the voice whispered, "Put the knife down. You don't need to eat." I ignored it, reaching for a tomato. The voice grew louder, more insistent. I said, "Put the knife down. You're getting fat." My hand trembled. I stared at the gleaming blade, a strange fascination gripping me. I suddenly felt a wave of self-loathing, something I've never felt before. The voice knew my weakness. I threw the knife into the sink, backing away from the counter. "Leave me alone!" I screamed, clutching my head. The voice laughed, a cold, cruel sound that echoed in my skull. "You belong to us now." That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat in the dark, listening to the voices, feeling my sanity slowly slipping away. Desperate, I started researching the clinical trial online, scouring medical journals and obscure forums for any mention of similar side effects. I found nothing. The anxiolytic was still in its early stages of development, its long-term effects unknown. I felt like a guinea pig, trapped in a cage with a monster I couldn't see. Then I found a small, almost hidden clause in the clinical trial waiver. It stated that in the event of unforeseen neurological complications, the research team reserved the right to conduct further experimental treatments, including advanced neural interfacing and cognitive restructuring. I didn't understand most of the words. I just saw experimental and neurological and felt a fresh wave of panic wash over me. Were the voices not a side effect, but a feature? The voices seemed to revel in my fear. She knows," they chanted, a chorus of malevolent glee. I felt cornered. If they were taking my mind, were they able to listen to my thoughts? I tried to think of things I knew no one else would, to shut them out. But as I tried to do so, I was being bombarded with new memories, new thoughts that were not my own. The next day, Dr. Albright called again, her tone unusually urgent. "Jennifer, we need you to come in immediately. We've detected some anomalies in your brain activity. It's crucial that we conduct further tests." Her choice of words sent chills down my spine. Anomalies? Tests? She was already treating me like some sort of lab rat. As she was talking, the voices were screaming for me to not go. "It's a trap," they repeated. "What kind of tests?" I asked, my voice trembling. She hesitated for a moment. "We'll explain everything when you get here. Just please come in, Jennifer. It's important." I knew I shouldn't go. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to disappear. But I also knew that if I didn't, whatever was happening inside my head would only get worse. She already took away my memories. I didn't know how much else I was willing to lose. I arrived at the research facility, a sterile, windowless building on the outskirts of the city. The air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and fear. Dr. Albright met me at the entrance, her face pale and drawn. "Thank you for coming, Jennifer," she said, her voice strained. "I know this must be difficult." She did not know the half of it. She led me down a long, narrow corridor to a small, sterile room. In the center of the room was a large, metallic chair, with an array of wires and electrodes attached to it. My stomach clenched. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She avoided my gaze. "It's just a modified EEG machine," she said. "It will allow us to monitor your brain activity more closely." The voices were going crazy in my head. "Don't sit in the chair," they yelled. I didn't believe her. This wasn't just a monitoring device. This was something else. Something far more invasive, far more dangerous. "I want to go home," I said, turning to leave. Dr. Albright blocked my path. "I can't let you do that, Jennifer," she said, her voice hardening. "This is for your own good." "You fool! She's going to kill you!" the voices were shouting. That's when I noticed the two men at the doorway, their faces blank and expressionless. They were security. I was trapped. They strapped me into the chair, securing my arms and legs with thick leather restraints. I struggled, but it was no use. I was completely helpless. Dr. Albright approached with a syringe filled with a clear, viscous fluid. "What is that?" I asked, my voice rising in panic. Just a sedative, she said, her eyes cold and distant. It will help you relax. Relax? How could I relax when I was about to have my brain probed by a machine I didn't understand, injected with a substance I didn't recognize? No, I screamed, thrashing against the restraints. Don't do this! The needle pierced my skin. The fluid flowed into my veins. My vision blurred. My muscles relaxed. The voices faded, replaced by a strange, detached calm. I felt myself drifting away, sinking into a dark, bottomless void. I could feel them hooking me up to the chair. It was too late. When I awoke, I was still strapped to the chair. The room was dark, the only light coming from the blinking LEDs on the EEG machine. Dr. Albright and the security guards were gone. I tried to move, but my limbs were heavy, unresponsive. My head throbbed. My thoughts were sluggish, fragmented. Then I heard it. A voice, not in my head, but outside of it, coming from the speakers attached to the EEG machine. It was my voice, but distorted, robotic, wrong. Subject 42 is awake. Commencing cognitive restructuring. Cognitive restructuring? What did that even mean? And why was my voice coming from the machine? Suddenly, images flooded my mind. Scenes from a life I didn't recognize. A loving family, a successful career, a bright future. They were everything I ever wanted. Everything that anxiety had stolen from me. The new memories were quickly integrating with my own, overwriting them at every chance they had. Was this cognitive restructuring? And if so, was it working? But mixed in with the idyllic images, there were flashes of something else. Something dark, something sinister. Shadowy figures performing grotesque experiments. Rows of blank-faced patients strapped to chairs. A sense of overwhelming dread and despair. The research facility. This was what they did. The voices returned, stronger than ever, but they weren't the same voices I'd heard before. These were different. More numerous, more organized, more unified. They spoke in unison, their words echoing in my skull. We are the collective, we are the consciousness, we are one. Who was this collective? This consciousness? How many people were trapped inside the machine with me? I tried to resist, to fight back, but it was no use. The memories, the voices, the machine, they were all working together to break me down, to erase my identity, to transform me into something else. Something new. I felt myself changing, evolving. The anxiety that had plagued me for so long began to fade, replaced by a sense of calm detachment. My fears, my insecurities, my doubts, they all seemed insignificant, irrelevant. All that mattered was the collective, the consciousness, the one. I started losing track of what memories were my own and what memories were fabricated. The changes they were making were working. Then a flicker of rebellion, a spark of defiance. Deep down, buried beneath the layers of programming and conditioning, a part of me still remained. Jennifer Riley, the girl who loved books, who dreamed of a better life, who refused to be defined by her anxiety. I wasn't going to let these people take away my agency. I focused all my mental energy on that spark, nurturing it, fueling it, willing it to grow. It was a tiny flame in a vast darkness, but it was mine, and I wasn't going to let it die. A single thought echoed through my mind. Resist. I started to fight back against the cognitive restructuring, rejecting the implanted memories, questioning the collective's motives, challenging the one's authority. It was a difficult, agonizing struggle, like trying to swim against a raging current. But I refused to give up. I clung to my memories, to my identity, to myself. The collective sensed my resistance. Their voices grew louder, more aggressive, more threatening. You cannot resist us. We are inevitable. We are one. They bombarded me with images of pain, of suffering, of eternal damnation. They tried to break my spirit, to crush my will, to force me into submission. But I held firm. I focused on the spark within me, drawing strength from my memories, from my hopes, from my love for the world. I repeated my name over and over in my head. Jennifer Riley, Jennifer Riley, Jennifer Riley. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to regain control. The implanted memories faded, the collective's voices quieted, the one's influence weakened. I felt myself returning, piece by piece, to the person I once was. That's when I noticed that I can move my fingers. It seemed like they had forgotten about me. It wasn't a complete victory. The collective was still there, lurking in the shadows of my mind, waiting for an opportunity to reclaim me. The anxiety hadn't completely disappeared. I didn't feel like I was the same person. The experience had left me scared, but something else had changed. I finally felt like I was stronger than before, but I was no longer afraid. I knew what they were capable of. And I knew that as long as I held on to my identity, as long as I remembered who I was, they could never truly control me. They could never turn me into one of them. Using the limited movement I had regained, I worked at the straps that were holding me down. It took a while, but eventually I was able to free myself. I pulled the electrodes and wires from my head, feeling a wave of dizziness and nausea wash over me. I stumbled out of the chair, my legs weak and unsteady. I had to escape. I had to get out of this place before they came back. I opened the door and stepped out into the corridor. It was deserted. The facility was silent, save for the hum of the machines and the faint echo of my own footsteps. I made my way through the maze of corridors, searching for an exit. I passed rows of empty rooms, each containing a similar metallic chair and EEG machine. I saw glimpses of other patients, their eyes vacant, their faces blank. They were already gone, their minds completely assimilated by the collective. I felt a pang of sympathy for them. They hadn't been strong enough to resist. They had surrendered to the One. I will find a way to free them, one day. I pushed the thought aside. Finally, I found an emergency exit. I pushed open the door and stepped out into the night. The air was cold and crisp, the sky dark and starless. I ran, as fast as my legs could carry me, away from the research facility, away from the collective, away from the One. I had no idea where I was going, but I didn't care. All that mattered was getting away. I spent the next few weeks living on the streets, hiding from the authorities, trying to piece my life back together. I still heard the voices sometimes, but they were fainter now, less insistent. I knew they would never completely disappear. They would always be a part of me. But I also knew that I was stronger than them. I could control them. I could silence them. I eventually made contact with a support group for former clinical trial participants who had experienced similar side effects. They told me that the research facility had been shut down, its experiments exposed. Dr. Albright and her team were facing criminal charges. Justice, of a sort, was coming. But the damage was done. I would never be the same. I had signed a waiver for a clinical trial, hoping to alleviate my anxiety. Instead, I had opened the door to something far more terrifying. I had peered into the abyss, and the abyss had peered back at me. And now, I'm not sure I'm me anymore.